Hello, January 19th to the 25th. This is true forever and ever, but this week, especially if you are not rewriting your life, you are playing out an old story. And where you are playing out an old story, that will be ripped from under your feet this week with every personal planet, almost every personal planet except Mars, moving to pass Pluto in Aquarius. Okay. So I woke up this morning with a song by John Mayer in my head, and I haven't listened to John Mayer. I actually think I listened to John Mayer like a few months ago, but before a few months ago, it truly had been like 15 years since I listened to John Mayer. Is that right? Like early 2010s. I was in high school. The album is Heartbreak Warfare, which I think is also kind of an apt title for the times. But let me talk about this song in particular. All we ever do is say goodbye. Okay, so I've been on a real kick of unconditional love, and that's it, to be honest. To me, unconditional love is the truth. I think that's the goal of not only your life, but every single moment. I think, regardless of personal interpretations right now, all of the outer planets, especially Pluto and Aquarius, are pointing us outside of astrology. And so the way I use astrology and practice astrology is very much so to move beyond it. But that said, I still use it and practice it. So on a day like today, which is Monday the 16th, we're setting ourselves up for a week where all we ever do is say goodbye. And that's very much so how I am positioning my interpretation this week. And when I understand this song and this line, this phrase, all we ever do is say goodbye, in the context of unconditional love, it's kind of funny, right? I think it's been turned on its head for me over the last few years because I've never been someone who had huge, like, career or financial ambitions in any normal sense. And I think all of my ambitions were to do with like love and creativity and friendship. But I found in the last several years that even those ambitions are simply just like goals that I might achieve and then not be satisfied. Um, because all we ever do is say goodbye. I mean, I think that's truly been the lesson of life, and it's kind of comical if you think about it again from that perspective of unconditional love. Time isn't real. Like we're all just kind of playing something out here. It's like, yeah, bye. Like form itself is a division. It's a illusion of division where I think the highest truth of reality is this idea of emptiness. But instead of meaningless emptiness, it is a very meaningful emptiness. And it is the choice that we make, the choice to use our minds in I'll say, the right way. I don't think there really is a right way, but it is the choice to use our minds to see things differently and not just to reinterpret your story because you can, but to zoom out. Firstly, zoom out as far as possible and see how much infinite context there is for everything, which means that anything, any interpretation, any meaning is equal, could be true, but also to see that you are not the story and you're not even the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. You are the consciousness that is allowing the play to exist anyway, like regardless and infinitely so. This is what I think. And these are both Neptunian and Aquarian themes all together. They are Neptunian because that planet Neptune is about the field. It is about the infinitely unified field of everything that could ever exist, will ever exist, never existed, all of the potentialities, all of the unknown, the known potentialities, all the things we can't even know to know, that's Neptune. And that's Pisces. Whereas Aquarius, which is actually today, Monday, we're starting Aquarius season. It's a very Aquarian week. Aquarius is the capacity to move between different levels, different perspectives of identification, whether you're feeling very identified with the story, with narrating the story, with holding yourself as the larger context, with the zooming out. That's the Aquarian, and those are the themes we're really stepping into this week. And so you can feel that from that more intellectual or mental perspective. But how this is going to play out in a personal sense is it will be very personal. We have Venus making a conjunction to Pluto today, which is very much so all we ever do is say goodbye, especially in the context of romantic relationships, in friendships, in social situations. And it's not like a one and done goodbye forever, but it's kind of like a revolving door that we're stepping through again. And this is more or less a year-long like transit, Venus Pluto, that differs when Venus goes retrograde, but every few years we get a Venus Pluto transit, so it's not necessarily rare. But when Venus makes a conjunction to Pluto, we see where we are uniquely, personally, intimately open to that deep drive for objectivity, the deep drive to be able to move between different levels of consciousness, where we can actually have an individual relationship with that pursuit, which is Venus. And so, again, so where this can show up in your life this week, this is also kind of depending on where it falls in your birth chart. But if you think about your groups of friends, if there is one person, which would be a Venus in Aquarius, which is the group, you have an entry point to a group of friends, or maybe you find yourself in a group of friends and then you meet somebody, right? There's this interplay between the group and the like individual and intimate relationship within the group and the dynamic that maybe one person within a group has to keep you in the group or to create a lot of love and charisma for the group, to create value for the group. And maybe it's you in that setting, you see your own value in that group. But this is really what we're stepping into this week with the Venus Pluto, with Pluto being involved. This is at best satisfying a deep urge for us to simultaneously feel empowered from our own core capacity to see objectively and to use that objectivity to basically live out unconditional love. And that's pretty much it. Like for the rest of the week, we have the sun, Mercury, and later next week it'll be Mars. But this week, so much of our immediate, present, intimate experience will be going through Pluto. We'll be re-establishing a relationship to Pluto, re-establishing a relationship to this deep desire for objectivity. And in this John Mayer album, he has another song called Friends, Lovers, or Nothing. And that's kind of the vibe also, I think, with not only Venus in Aquarius, because Venus is in Aquarius is somewhat platonic, like it very much so loves and is deeply relational in the context of a group or a context of like platonic group. Aquarius just is so detached in that way. It can be a deep bond and love for an idea that brings a group together and a love for the group itself and not necessarily just one person. Like Venus and Aquarius people, and having Venus and Aquarius is just makes people really love their friends. But with Pluto being there right now and with Venus being Pluto, there is a change in that dynamic of how you love your friends, how maybe one relationship again brings you into a group, or a group brings you to one relationship, or there is an idea that's somewhat objective, Pluto and Aquarius, very powerful, but it becomes very subjective for you with Venus there this week, and you get to restart an intellectual pursuit in a way based on an individual personal relationship that is founded on a shared Aquarian ideal or understanding, something deeply motivating, an idea that is shared between people. And so it's not just Venus, but it's the Sun and Mercury will conjunct each other, and then they will conjunct Pluto as well. And so we are not only having the opportunity, like seeing the osmosis, that's a conjunction is an osmosis, seeing the osmosis between where we are open, which is Venus, and our deepest core desire, which is that objectivity, where we are open to that algorithmic objectivity, but also with the Sun and Mercury, how we are creating that in every moment of our life with the Sun, the present moment consciousness, how we are communicating that coherently with Mercury being there. And as I speak on Monday, Mercury and Mars also just made a conjunction to each other in at the end of Capricorn. And so that's actually the third conjunction out of three conjunctions that Mercury and Mars have made to each other over the last several months due to Mercury's retrograde a few months ago. But essentially, we have been working out the coherence of our actions, which is Mars, and our words, which is Mercury, in Capricorn, which has everything to do with the structure of our reality and the fractal patterning of like, what are the actual loops that we're playing out? Are we playing out the old stories? And I mean physically behaving the old stories, or are we consciously rewriting them? And with a Mercury Mars new phase, we get to be rewriting our new stories through our actions that are defining the edges of our reality in Capricorn. It's not just about getting to work, it's saying, here's where I begin and I end, and my actions, how I'm thinking about that edge, they are coherent with each other right now. So we're starting the week with that conjunction, Mercury Mars conjunction. We will get Venus Pluto on Monday. We will get the Mercury Pluto conjunction later on Thursday. On Friday, we'll have the Sun Pluto conjunction. And then later next week, we'll have the Mars Pluto conjunction. And that will be all of the interpersonal planets passing Pluto, passing the deepest, like motivational baseline that we have for objectivity, for seeing everything basically as a friend and not attaching specific meaning to something, but also not seeing it as empty and meaningless. We're moving away from this definition, this understanding of emptiness, which is very pervasive right now with Saturn, Neptune. We're moving away from that as a meaningless emptiness, and we are moving into consciously restructuring the quote unquote void with meaning. That meaning is unconditional love. Do you understand? Unconditional love is the meaning of everything. And so anytime you feel a void, anytime you feel space, if it's not unconditional love, you can kind of just allow yourself to detach and laugh a little bit. And this might be really hard. I know it's been hard for me these last few days. Okay. And I think that's probably why I got this song this morning Um, in the song, one of the lines goes, let me see. It goes, I can't keep running after yesterday. So why do you want to break my heart again? And why am I going to let you try? And I don't think the way I'm interpreting this is not like about somebody else. It's about me. It's about, again, the perspective and that being the thing that I can choose, that being the thing that you can choose. From where are you projecting the meaning of this? Can you zoom out even further to not complicate, but to give yourself proof that this is not the only way of interpreting it? And you don't need to find the right way. You just need to make space for unconditional love and a sense of non-expectation and friendship, which isn't to say you have to just make everyone platonic, but it is to say this is not a moment to take things very seriously. In fact, the antidote, I think, to that obsessive quality of Venus Pluto is to almost laugh, like laugh about it. Okay. So there's a bunch of other things happening this week. What I'm most interested in is actually on Thursday. We'll have Mercury making a conjunction to Pluto, but we will also have the moon in Pisces. And actually, it's also on Wednesday, the moon is in Pisces, and on Wednesday, the moon will be conjunct the North Node in Pisces, while Mercury and the Sun are in there, like, just minutes away from being conjunct to Pluto. So having the moon in Pisces on the North Node says, like, emotionally, we are very much so aligned with this Piscean direction of unconditional love, creativity, and our immediate consciousness in our sun and the way that we are communicating rationally, how we are understanding, how we are narrating our own lives, even with Mercury on that day. Sun, Mercury are coherent with Pluto. Moon is coherent with North Node. And so this these are just days I'm particularly excited to see how they shape out in the world because these are signatures which suggest everything I've just been talking about, right? Like being emotionally aligned to a direction of unconditional love and consciously allowing ourselves, not resisting moving out, zooming out, seeing things objectively, but still allowing ourselves to enjoy that with Venus there a few degrees away. So I'm particularly interested in Wednesday and Thursday. Um, Today, Monday, is a big day. Also, that really sets the tone for the rest of this week. But Friday looks interesting as well, simply because that's when Mars will enter Aquarius. The sun makes its conjunction to Pluto. The moon will be in Aries, and this is also the first quarter sextile of the lunar phase. And so by Friday, we kind of have a grip on what this lunar cycle is going to be about, what we're going to be working on in these last few weeks before the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And then the moon is in Aries, really Saturday. Moon moves into Taurus on Monday, and then on Sunday, 25th. And then next week, not only is Neptune entering Aries, but Mars will make a conjunction to Pluto within like 24 hours of Neptune entering Aries, which brings an incredible shift, an incredible focus onto the active part of our life onto the every single behavior of every single moment now from the 26th onwards is ruled by Mars. Sorry, Mars rules Neptune, basically, is what I'm trying to say. The truth, this objective truth of unconditional love, is now being filtered through every single action that we're taking. And every single action that we are taking is osmosing itself with objectivity. So that's huge. I'm not going to go deep into that here. I will, I think, later this week. But there's quite a bit going on. And yet, the way I want to wrap this up and to, you know, advise, if you will, is to remain objective, not detached. But this isn't a time to expect things of other people. This is a time to be joyful, to understand your own power, but also to understand that your power is in your objectivity and in your compassion. Your power and the reason you don't need to fear anything is because you are all of it, right? There's nothing outside of you. When you condemn someone else, that's not going to help you. There's much more wisdom in, even if you do feel you must condemn someone or you feel quite strongly, just zoom out. You don't have to invalidate that feeling, but try to see it differently. Try to zoom out of whatever structure or framework is allowing that narrative to grow. It's probably going to feel like the last thing you want to do is to zoom out because it is so meaningful to give things meaning, especially challenging things, whether it's like a good challenge or a bad challenge. Um, so I'm not advocating to be a robot. I'm not advocating to, totally detach from reality. No, I'm advocating for you understanding your own power in your mind and how that practice of zooming out, even in an intimate or a very personal connection, that is really what our soul has been craving. Whether you call it a soul, whether you call it your like emptiness, whether you whatever you want to call it, your spirit, I don't really care. The thing in you that's undying right now, Pluto and Aquarius wants objectivity. And we have a very, very direct and personal line to understanding the power of that objectivity this week, over and over and over again. So I'll just repeat one more time. I think Wednesday, the 21st, is going to be very interesting. And I do think this week, all we're going to be doing is saying goodbye. I think there's a lot of endings in these moments. Yes, once the planets pass Pluto, they're in a new phase to Pluto, which means they're beginning anew. Of course, Venus and Mars and the Sun, these are all in a new phase to each other right now. So there's a lot of new happening. But if we zoom out, we see Neptune, Saturn is still in its balsamic phase. There's still this massive culmination. And so to understand the wisdom in saying goodbye, to understand the wisdom of like non-attachment, presence, like immediate clarity and seeing, zooming out. Final thing I'll say is don't repress. Okay? This is a good time to transmute. All right? If you can see, I have been transmuting things. It's very fun. Transmute however you want. It's probably um, a creative thing. And that's astrologically because Pluto and Aquarius, anywhere you need to figure out how to transmute Pluto stuff, you look to the opposite sign of where Pluto is. So right now, the opposite sign of Aquarius is Leo, and that's going to be true forever. Okay. Next 20 years. So anytime you're having a difficult Aquarian thing happening, mental obsession, for example, Pluto obsession, Aquarius mental, just go do Leo things, which is like creating stuff. Go paint, go sing, go just go have fun, right? Leo is that childlike fun and play. Go create. It's active, creative, very individual, very egoistic, very personal. Go put yourself in a situation where you can like be the center of attention, right? Even if that's just with yourself. So that'll be the key this week. I absolutely recommend that. So that is what I have. I hope you have a lovely, lovely, powerful week. And until the next one, let me know if there's anything specifically you want me to address in more detail. And that's all. Bye.